So I'll be joining in on the festivities afterwards.
So can we do a quick sound off, Mike, because you're playing with new technologies and I don't see us live yet.
Yep, I just hit the button, so
Oh.
we're there now.
Start over.
All right, good
Starting
morning.
over. Good morning.
Good morning.
Tommy's
This
gonna
will be-
Tommy's gonna
yeah.
have some editing going on for this.
We
for
were
this
talking to
episode.
ourselves for 5 minutes there. Mike's playing with new technologies again.
In an effort to improve our
Yeah.
experience, I've severely hampered it. As actually, I guess. Okay, so good morning, everyone. It's Tuesday morning. Explicit Measures Podcast. We have some announcements we're going to kick out here. There's a couple events coming up. Tommy, kick us off. What's the event coming up this evening?
So tonight, if you're watching this live, or that's happened before, if you're watching this after Tuesday, the 27th, is going to be the July Chicago Power BI user group. We're going to be diving into refining and optimizing your data model, and we're going to be using two tools, and we're going to just touch the surface of the best practice analyzer and tabular editor, and the Vertipack analyzer that's also in Tabular Editor 3, but also in DAX Studio. If you've never heard of these tools or have just dabbled in them, this is going to be a really great introduction to the impact this can have on a data model. So it won't necessarily be the full case in a Tabular Editor. Mike's going to go into that tonight as well. But this is really like what an impact this can do to refine whether you're having your measures right or things that are really bloating your report. And as always with our Chicago user groups, because we were copying the Milwaukee user group, we'll be doing the happy hour after. So if you want to join in the conversation, have any talk about what the main topic was, or just any questions that you have, we'll be doing our happy hour afterwards.
Yep. And if you're also in Milwaukee, feel free to join as well. We're gonna do another joint session between Tommy and the Chicago group and the Milwaukee group together. It's been more efficient for us. We can then share the workload a little bit, but we also get a bigger audience and I think more engagement as well. So join us tonight, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. I guess it's -5 UTC if you enjoy. And we do that the last Tuesday of every month. We typically have a user group that we'll put on as well. So feel free, if you missed this one, join us next month. Anyways, topic for today. Actually, one more announcement. I gotta give Tommy some credit here. We were having a conversation around, and there's a gentleman on, I believe, in the chat window, Chris Wagner, who's actually hanging out. So Tommy has made. So Chris does this really interesting thing where he goes around and he finds the best people in Power BI things, just people who are awesome in what they're doing. They're really contributing a lot to the community. And Chris has just recently promoted Tommy into the Data Gods, I guess, group. What Athena? Like what do you what do you call what do you call it when you make it to the clouds and you're now a data god? I don't know what that you've ascended, Tommy.
Ascended. Yeah, I think that's the word that Chris used. So yeah, that's I'll first say it does not help with your spouse to say, "Aren't you happy to be married to a god now?" Because it doesn't have the same impact.
Yes.
But no, I've been looking at this for a while. So basically, yeah, Chris does an amazing job of kind of curating. I think some of the people who contribute the best. I am just one of the I think the people that just fly around compared to the other Hercules around on the site. But no, I worked with Chris to kind of just get the profile up. Our podcast is on there, so we're promoting that, and so pretty cool. So thanks to Chris for that. And you guys have been on the mountain for a while now. So
yeah. If for the listeners, if you want to check out the home of the data gods, you can check that out on Chris's website also, at KratosBI.com with a K.
With a K, and there's some great templates on there too. Like we talked about the data visualization guide, that's on their template. I think there's a few other templates that Chris has put on there, and then someone's done a cheat sheet in every language possible. So it's not only of looking at people who have really contributed a lot, but he curates a lot of people who have like some of the best content out there.
And I'll be the first to say it's a pleasure to be a part of a community that celebrates great contributors back. And Chris, thank you so much for doing that and putting it together. If you're looking for people to follow on like Twitter or social media accounts, go to Kratos BI. There's a ton of really good people that if you're in this space, I would say these are the kind of people you need to be following. They're helping me learn. They're helping other people learn. It's just in general, I think, a really good representation of our community.
Completely agree. The one thing I'll say is thanks, Chris, again too, because as we were working on the drawing, the first one that came out, I could hear my father in my ear saying, "You're not Sicilian enough in this. Why aren't you Sicilian?" So I said, "Can you make it a little more
Can you make the
tan?"
nose a little
He's
bigger?
like, yeah, can you make olive eyes? Just so we got that down, but
Good
yeah.
stuff, man.
I also believe we have another one, a comment in the chats already. Someone's asking about my jersey. I knew someone would. So this is my Power BI jersey, just freshly minted. Literally came in yesterday, and I'm so excited for it. It looks so cool, and I have across the top. It's called Data Mike. That was actually one of my clients gave me that nickname, Data Mike. So
Data Mike.
I've embraced it.
That was a while ago, wasn't it?
It was a long time ago. That's like 4 years ago.
That. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. They didn't want to call me by my real name. They just wanted to call me Data Mike. So that's,
where's Data Mike?
Where's Data Mike? I need
Killer
Data
Mike.
Mike. Anyways, so jumping into the topic today, this will be an interesting topic. I will not guarantee that there won't be tears on this one. I think this is something that hits near and dear to many professional people working, and I think also potentially exacerbated by the pandemic in some ways, where I have a phrase that I've been using. I heard it on Twitter, and I thought, this is a very appropriate phrase. I used to work from home, but now I home from work is basically what it turns into. I'll let that sink in there for a second. But I feel like there's been times, areas where I feel like I work a lot more than I should be. And the topic today is really around what does your work-life balance look like? And maybe when was, like, not in addition to that, potentially, right? When was a time that you were very in balance? And when was a time you were very imbalanced? And then how do you jump between the two? So I'll start off because I proposed the topic and I was like, this is going to be a heavy one. We're going to get into it. And I'll be the first to admit, I really, really like the Power BI space. I like everything about the community. I'm really, really excited. So part of I know as you become more self-aware, I think as you go through your career, you kind of figure out like what makes you tick. And I definitely felt like one of the things that makes me tick is being able to help other people. I really get a kick out of being able to teach and communicate and work with other people. People energize me in general. That's part of how I like to be around people. So to come into a space where I know this thing about Power BI, I can teach people about what I know. And I've done it enough times. I feel like there's a couple points in here where I can literally watch people light up as they get the aha moment. And that's really satisfying for me. I really think that's like a moment where I'm like, yeah, that's pretty cool. But that being said, one of the challenges at the Carlo family has been we don't know when I'm working on work versus when I'm learning Power BI, because it all involves sitting in front of a computer. So, I'll play with you on a day here or a common day. I'll get up, we'll do some work in the morning, start 7, 8 o'clock or so in the morning. I'll work all day. Maybe I'll take a lunch depending if I have meetings or not throughout lunch. So I may. And again, I'm working in my basement, so it's literally like my family's upstairs and I'm downstairs. So I'll come down here and work. They know not to come down. They know that when the door's closed to the basement, that's his daddy's area and this is daddy's time. And I feel like in some ways it's like, yeah, as a consultant, you have to be hyper focused on what you're working on. Like there's no water cooler conversation for me. I don't get to just piddle around, right? I have deliverables. People expect me to get stuff done. So I show up, I work, and it's like, it's hard. I mean, it's intense, like, no fluff, work, go time. And so I do that, and then maybe not get lunch, and then around 6 p.m. I have to have a cut. I did for a period of time, I did not have a hard set time of when I stop. And so I would work way later than I need to. I would be up at 7:30, and I would stop, and then I would barely see my kids for 30 minutes. And so I really, really love my family. And I want to make sure I spend time with them. And particularly, there's some hard questions that kind of came back from the kids. Are you going to have to work through dinner tonight? Or are you going to eat with us? There are some really tough things that are like, ugh, it hits you really hard in the heart. And you're like, I got to prioritize here. I really got to prioritize. And then when things were bad, or when things get a little intense, 8:30, I'm done with work time or family time, basically. From 6 to like 8:30 is like hang out with kids, do dinner, hang out with them. And then there's like, okay, I still have stuff I've got to deliver. I didn't get all the things that I wanted to. I got distracted. I helped other people out or whatever it was, right? And then I hop back on at 8:30 and then I just burn it until I can't anymore. I literally like fall over and crash. So that has been a pattern that I've been into where it was unhealthy for me. So that's my story right there. There's probably a lot more tangents we'll get on. I'll kick it over to Tommy. Some of your thoughts on this.
There's a few personal things that I'm honestly struggling whether to share on the internet, but no, I mean I there's a lot with this that, again, we always talk about how much we love what we do.
Yes.
And not just the job, which we all love, but the community too. But and maybe not everyone's like this, because I think it's a personality thing too. And unfortunately, I think the three of us, I think a lot of us in the space, if you're in the community, are obsessive people sometimes, or just very passionate, and passionate usually involves time.
Yeah.
I've always struggled too with, just in the professional life in general, is like, is it good enough? Like, am I doing something not just good, but valuable, and especially in this space, because millions of people are doing Power BI, and, it's like, okay, I did it this way. Well, couldn't, we've talked about this before. Couldn't a machine do this? Couldn't a robot do this?
Yep.
Or couldn't just someone random do this? So I've taken a lot of time over the years to learn, and, almost and say in my own head, like, to have the goal of, I want to be invaluable and have the knowledge to be that solution provider, not just to be able to build these things, but to be able to come up with the answers, come up with an answer that no one else would be able to do, or, like, be able to lead in certain things. With that in mind, it's made it very hard, because there's a lot in time involved to learn things, to kind of shape things. So what's happened is, for anyone listening, if you're young and 22 and you have no family, this still applies. So this has nothing to do with having kids or a family too.
Yep.
If you have friends,
Yeah.
if your own self, if you care about your own well-being, what comes into play is,
True.
I've had situations where I was fearing, in a sense, for, like, nothing wrong was happening, but I would fear for the future. And I literally would basically do a lot of mistakes, where I'd be coming home at 3 or 4 in the morning from work. And this was years ago, and before we had kids. But again, it doesn't matter, just because it was like, I have to do this, because the thing,
no, I totally agree with that.
What I've realized in Power BI, or just in, not necessarily just Power BI, but in this IT solution provider kind of thing, nothing's ever necessarily done.
Yes.
It can, like,
nothing's complete. I would agree with that.
even if you publish a report, it's not done.
Correct.
So there's always, and there's never like a 0 to 100%, because you're like, well, I could do this, or what if I could do this? And so I've struggled with that over the years, and now especially trying to balance with the kids. And I know you talked about, like, with COVID or working from home, to me, there hasn't been too much of a difference, unfortunately, where, I not take everything with the job and the passion that I have with what I do, because, like, I usually get to work probably way too early, like at 6 a.m, and sometimes I'll leave at 6. And that's just a normal day, and when I should be leaving at 3. But take that, and now you have to balance, your 5-year-old daughter kind of figuring out, like, you gonna be home today? No.
Yeah.
Are you working today? Why are you working? It's like, how much do you like food? Like, let's start.
Do you like your house?
Yeah.
Do you want a toy on Christmas?
Yeah. But and then well, these, for me, like, even when I try to go to bed, like, especially if we're working on a project, or what happens is, like, I'm still thinking about it. So I'll just tell, like, as I'm going to bed, I literally get out of bed and go, I'm going to sleep in the basement, because it just, for whatever reason, I can actually calm down there. So then I'm, like, not seeing my wife. But then, so take just the job, and now take everything else we're doing. We're doing this podcast. You guys are doing user groups. We're doing all the stuff with the the MVP.
Running a blog is not a lot of, it's a lot of work too.
Like, yeah. And all the stuff now is kind of put on top. So it's, you take, it's a curse of how much, the curse of the passion so much, I rather be passionate about this and love what I do, but it's hard to kind of say where that stop point is. So that was a long soliloquy, but I think I said as much personal as, you get there.
The things I'd say are essentially the same, right? If we were setting the stage for what work-life balance looks like, or the fact that we're talking about it means potentially, there's
an
some
imbalance.
things we need to pay attention to there, right?
Yes.
But there's typical traits, right? And I think about the individuals that I have this conversation with, and it is about what Tommy just said. They're very passionate. They're driven, in one way or another. They have, what we've kind of termed as a learning mentality. You love learning new things. You thrive on challenges. You love to help others, and you're problem solvers, right? Without them, I think you get bored or lazy, right?
Yeah.
So if we didn't enjoy what we were doing to some degree, we wouldn't have a work-life balance question or challenge. But when you butt that up against getting engaged in a job or getting engaged with a community, a business will never tell you to work less. Right? They may give it lip service and support you, but at the same time, unless you have direct representatives or managers in your life that are like bashing you over the head, and that is something I try to do. I just went on vacation, and when I go on vacation, I'm out.
Lights out.
Legit. I'm always available as a manager, but you need to call me.
Yep.
Right. But I'm not going to check my email. I'm not going to log in. I'm not going to solve the business's problems.
I think that's a good rule, though.
That's the only time I have, and I'm not even using it all to dedicate 100% to my family. Right. So when you have a family or your own, even if you don't, right, like that is your downtime, and you have to recharge and do the things that you want to do only, and not have the noise of where you spend all of your time. Otherwise, you're not going to come back refreshed.
Agreed. And you're also, I would also argue to that point, you wouldn't even be a better employee if you don't have that recharge. Like you can burn the candle at both ends, but then you face this. I mean, and I think it's not about the sell. Alex Powers was talking about like there's a real burnout thing going on. If people love asking for help, and if you help them, they will continue asking for more help. If you don't put up solid barriers there. Yeah, that's a really good point, Seth.
Right. So, obviously you butt that up against, the community. Do you choose community, or do you choose like some free time because you're burning a little hot at work, or, spend time with a significant other, right? Yeah. And for those that have families, that's where that comes in as well, right?
Yeah.
So I think all of us have set the stage that there are areas of our lives that have become important, have become rewarding for us in some level, that we want to keep devoting time. So how are different ways in which you've managed, that passion and rewarding aspect of work and community with family and other things that reward you, right? What do you guys have? What have you guys done?
If you don't mind, I'll go for, because I was literally going to say something about this, and you brought up a really good idea. So when I first started doing Power BI, when it just came out, we had no kids, but my wife and I were still married, not me and Russo, to go back a few episodes, but because everything was new and you felt like you had to get things done, and there wasn't, especially to the idea of like, well, how long does it take to build a report, especially because it was so new. So I would have these weeks where I said, okay, I'm going to figure all this out in 2 weeks. And it was something that maybe you shouldn't have been building Power BI or what's not. So it was like probably 2 weeks. And this would happen in probably like a 6 or 9 month period, where it would be 2 weeks where I would work probably, get to work at 6, leave at 4 in the morning, get home for an hour, work again. And then the weekend I was done. And I would do this, and to me, it's almost like I felt virtuous, like going back almost to the virtuous waste.
Yeah.
Because you're learning DAX, so you're like trying to figure this out, and there's no way you're going to leave at 6 at night when you kind of have the formula right, but it's just not.
Yep.
And
there's a little bit of an unknown too. Right?
Yeah.
You feel like you're there.
Right.
I feel like, like just another 30 minutes, and I can get it.
Yeah.
And then you look at your clock, and you're like, oh shoot, that's been like 3 hours.
Wow! I don't have 9 missed calls.
Yeah, but you don't. So part of this new world, I feel like, is we don't understand. Like, yes, you do a good job of like estimating how things
Mhm.
work, but unless you start like you take tracking like how long it
Yeah.
takes you to do things,
Yeah.
you start learning like you can't just peanut butter spread some of these
Right.
problems. You kind of have to really dig into them, and after you've done like a couple of these stupid like shoot, I just burned 3 hours on this simple thing. Well, that was a lot
That
harder than I want.
right.
And then you say, well, I need to solve this differently. And then you go back, upstream and say, I'm going to
Mhm.
modify the data source upstream to make this easier to calculate downstream because the DAX is too complicated.
And that was 4 in the morning. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was 9 months of this, and I felt like this is the only way to do it. And finally, my boss, again, this is back in 2015, 2016,
Yeah.
was like, you know, you're doing all this stuff, but we're not seeing the productivity. We really need to work on some things. And I remember feeling offended, like what are you talking about, kind of thing. I'm putting all this time in, but you know what? You may do something like I forgot where the article came from, but it's basically, there's a certain period when you work that eventually it's like a diminishing returns
Yep.
where you're not going to produce the same outcome. So I would have those
Yeah.
weeks. But yeah, so going back to the question about how do you balance it, it's about understanding that it doesn't have to be solved today.
Yep.
For the most part, like if you're building a report, as long as there's the right timetable, even if you have the idea of how to solve it,
Yep.
it doesn't have to necessarily be solved today. You can take this in spurts, and that's very hard to do. It's easier said than done, but to me, that's where it's been, I think, the biggest fruit from that. So
I want to talk on kind of two topics here, or well, two areas of time that I want to kind of communicate that I think fit me well. There is work time, and that's like when I'm building stuff for clients, and that's kind of maybe the consulting space of me. And then there's like learning time. And then there's this. So learning time is like when I'm like writing a blog post, or like right now, I feel like Explicit Measures is part of my learning time. Like I'm learning things from you guys that will make me better at my career. And I spend time intentionally working on like learning Power BI, learning data stuff, learning, data platform things, because those are things that benefit my career, as well as they're very interesting to me. So my hobby has now become learning things about data stuff that I just really enjoy. And the reason I bring up these 2 points, right? Because I enjoy, my hobbies have now changed to now be data things, and my work is now also data things. So that whole phrase of if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. I feel like I'm in a moment right now where at this period of my time in my life, I'm really enjoying what I'm doing both professionally and for my hobbies. However, this is where I think things get real for me, is I look at this and then I see this from my world, right? How I perceive it. There's another whole perception of this thing is how my kids and how my wife sees this. And I think that's another aspect to this that I don't think I considered well enough, and I'm still kind of working my way through. Whereas they just see me working all the time. To them, there's no distinction between my hobbies and my work at this point. And so when they see me early in the morning in the podcasting, or and I have 2 or 3 user groups in a week or something, or I'm speaking a lot, and like they're like, "What are you doing? You're just working all the time." And I'm like, "No, this is fun." They're like, "What?" Like they don't. There's a distinct difference there, and so that's something that I'm trying to like. There needs to be a bit of an external focus on what you're doing. I feel like there needs to be like a bit of an external window here that you're looking at what other people are perceiving your time as, because that also makes quite a difference in like what you spend your time on.
a great example of that is try to vent to your wife about a data model not working and see if she lights up or not. When you're like, oh, you want to hear what happened today? So someone didn't create the relationships correct. Like to that, when you talk about perceiving,
you gotta take the whole thing and turn it over to like a Bachelorette episode. Like, I was talking with Ricky, and Ricky wasn't relating to Bobby, right, or Sarah, or whatever. And then they were in a fight, and then the relationship became inactive.
Gotta make it gossip.
And then I had to reactivate the relationship, but it was wrong. It was one directional. It wasn't too. It was wrong. It was just. And then I think then if we can talk, you can encrypt it.
Then they went bi-directional.
Oh no!
What does that mean, Mike? Tell me more.
Yeah. But if they don't get the same frustration, it was a perception. You could say the reason I stayed late was, well, the tax wasn't working, and they're gonna go,
don't care.
Yeah.
And this is where I've had a lot of struggle with too, is where you spend your time is where you put your priorities, and that communicates. So I may have different priorities, and I may say that I have different priorities, but where I'm physically spending my time
Yeah.
is where my priorities are. And that's perceived by other people by where my priorities are sitting. And so, like, when I am enjoying my hobby as data stuff and I'm enjoying my work as data stuff, to everyone else that says that is my priority over you. And that I would say, depending on how much your priority is on your work and or your hobby things, that's detrimental to your relationships and family stuff. And
Yeah.
I literally don't have a lot of friend time. I literally don't. It's like, you guys are my friends because we talk all the time. So I would consider you 100% friends. But like, it's for me, like, it's literally work, it's family, and it's like training on Power BI. Like that's literally like my workflow. And then weekends, I try to keep workout as much as possible. And I've had to do that because if I don't, things get out of balance, and there are tears at the Carlo household.
So you bring up something. I have a question for you guys, but you brought up something about hobbies.
Yeah.
I would say highly recommend that. Try to have like the thing that's helped me. It's almost been a saving grace is having at least one or two additional hobbies that are not data, because you can say it's your passion, but it's still work. So like for me, I try to bike, but I also really try to cook and learn how to like just cooking things, because it gets me out of it, and you need that. So that's when you ask like how do you balance things, it doesn't have to be a huge hobby. You don't have to start knitting and join a knitting club.
I mean,
But if you want
I do really enjoy knitting.
Yeah, but I mean, you're like, well, I mean, how do you think this jersey? Where do you think this jersey came from? But no, hobbies, outside hobbies, and again, it could be something as simple as reading about history, or it could be like something like cooking. That's been a saving grace for me.
Well, I want to add to that just a bit, Tommy. I like the idea of hobbies, but I also want to add to that, pick hobbies that you and your family can do together if that's your priority. So one thing, like my son and I love Legos. I love Legos. I gave that to him. Like I bought him a lot of Legos. He just loves Legos. We like building together. Like that's becoming like a hobby for us. And so like I need to find other hobbies for my other children, and make sure like, and what is the hobby with the white? Like we like going out to eat, and that was actually quite hard for us during the pandemic because we liked going out to eat together to have like a nice meal, date nights. And we made a conscious decision that says we need to dedicate time to ourselves once a month. Like we got to, and it's once or twice a month, and so it's, if you don't schedule it, it does not happen. And so like you have to make your hobbies line up with their hobbies as well.
So I kind of think about these things that you guys are outlining, right? We're having this conversation because we struggle with it in terms of significant others, families. Things get out of whack once in a while, right? So if I'm gonna come out of this conversation, because maybe audience members find themselves in positions where you're doing what you love, but the perception or reality really is you're not investing the time that you need to in other spaces of your life. These are some of the things that I guess I would say to you that I've worked through over the past year or two specifically, right? Is one, you have to take control. Like no one's going to do it for you.
Yeah.
And the first step in the steps to get find work-life balance, right? I guess in my mind, right? I'm not a huge goals guy. I have them, but I don't, they're not really hard to find kind of things. I just keep doing stuff, right? But I think it is important for us to take a step back and define what success is and what is happiness and what fulfills us in our life. And this conversation is one that I've had earlier in the year where I almost like lost it in front of a large group of people, and kind of almost did, because I realized how out of balance my life was around the things that do truly make me happy. Like the pandemic sucked, and working from home was like, I had to, but at the same time, it was the best thing that ever happened. Like I saw my kids every day, could walk upstairs and give my wife a hug. She could hear about Power BI and all my frustrations.
All those idiots at work.
So a lot of benefits there, right?
Yes.
But the way I've kind of taken these things and shaped them into how I try to operate on a day-to-day, week-to-week, or month-to-month basis. Is I look at this as kind of an exercise in mindfulness,
Hmm.
right? Everything I do, I know I'm going to have competing priorities for where I love spending my time. I need to make sure that whatever I've defined as success and happiness and fulfilling things for me are getting portions of my time because they're important to me
Yeah.
and they're important to those that are.
Uh-oh. I think you're getting to a really good point, and your video just froze.
This
Wait,
starts.
Can you say that?
Did
Can
we
you say that
lose-
last
Oh
point?
my god.
Can you say that last part over again? It just froze your video
Yeah,
for
you
like 2
just
seconds. You're like,
froze
and the
in
most,
the
yeah, and the best.
And the
Yeah.
the best. No,
The only secret I can give you is out.
no. So I think I defined success, happiness,
Yep.
fulfillment.
Yep.
Like, did you cut out before? This is really an exercise in mindfulness.
It's an exercise
after that.
in, and then a cut.
Yeah.
Right. So to me, on a daily basis, this is an exercise in mindfulness.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
am I devoting the time, if I've defined that in terms of the success, the happiness and fulfillment that I get from certain areas of my life, and people are part of my life, that's what I need to do on a daily, on a weekly, monthly basis, is make sure that I'm devoting the amount of time to these individual spaces and these people, because I've made them, they're important to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as simple as it sounds, that starts with scheduling things. Like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and that includes family,
Yeah.
right?
Totally.
Because one of the things in here, and I think it was even in the chat, is use these when you start time boxing things, you realize that time is your most valuable asset.
Yeah, that's what I would say all day long.
When you use
Yeah.
focused time and energy into family or work, right? You have a limited amount of time, so you crush it or you leave it to the next day.
Yep.
Because focus time is better than time spent.
Yep.
Right. And
Yeah.
a lot of times, like, yes, there's going to be times where you got to work late, or you want to finish the thing and it's going to go over.
It's seasonal.
Or,
Yeah. You made
right,
a commitment.
and
You're trying to live up to the commitment.
right.
Yeah.
And sleep, man. Like, some people don't need it. I think
Sleep's
6 to 8
overrated. No.
every night, man.
2 to 3,
Yeah,
probably 4 to
because
5, maybe
it,
max.
it builds up
The
on you.
the extra hours that you spend twisting around in your head trying to solve that problem, the guy who has enough rest is going to solve it before you.
It's so
I don't know
true.
about that. I would challenge that. I would challenge that enough.
For the unintellectuals here, that's true. For me, no, Seth, those are some great points, and I think Chris Wagner said that too. Like, if you start categorizing things, and I gotta stop hitting the desk, but it starts getting depressing if you start saying, "I'm going to do 3 hours for this and 7 hours for this," because then you realize that how much time is already being spent with work, and you're like, nothing will ever reach that because you're already going to be there for the rest of your life, 40 hours minimum.
I disagree, Tommy, on that one. But keep going. I see where you're going, but
yeah.
I'm going to disagree with you on that point.
So, and the reason I will say this is I don't know if you guys ever heard of the YouTube channel CPG Gray.
Yeah, I've heard of
He
him.
does all the training stuff, and he has one on goals.
Yep.
And he talks about, if you're going to have a goal for, like, you'll say your yearly goal, don't have a goal like, I'm going to do, like, if let's say biking, like, I'm going to bike 2,000 miles kind of things, like, because that's something that usually will end in disappointment. Instead, try to have a goal like, I want to bike more kind of thing, because it's something more like, obviously with work, there's smart goals, but don't have smart goals with, your own personal life. And I've tried to apply that more, like, with, like, let's say the cooking with the kids, like every Sunday we've implemented, like, we do
awesome,
it's pasta Sunday kind of thing. So that was also part of the deal.
Sunday.
That was also part of the deal when we got married. I was literally, as I was proposing my wife, I said, listen, you could paint the house
whatever you want. I get Sundays,
but it's pasta Sunday Sundays. So, but the kids help out, and
awesome.
I mean, we'll help. We'll say,
but it'll come a time. They'll get better.
Yeah. There's a lot of flour, but everywhere. But the point is, like, we're saying, like, on Saturdays I'm going to be available. Not like we're going to go on big, do these big
Yep.
things, like, and what does that mean for me? It means that I'm getting the sleep through the week, so I'm not a zombie on Saturday.
That's a true statement too.
So it's
Really
all
good
those
point.
little things, because you can say, I'm just going to work really late this Tuesday. Well, guess what? That's going to catch up on you.
You're gonna cheat at yourself on the weekend.
Yeah, you're going to cheat on yourself. So it's like, I'm going to be available on Saturdays and Sunday where I'm going to cook.
Yeah.
If I can just do those basic things, and maybe that's all I can offer sometimes too, then at least be happy with that. So
I have, maybe I fall into this, and maybe you guys have as well, but like being a new parent, and again, I have an 11-year-old, so like not that new. I'm getting, but there's still new things you're always like figuring out as you go along. And I think initially when you become a dad or have kids around, you assume that for us to have a good time, it's like I had to make this big thing. It has to be like this big event thing potentially for the kids.
yeah,
And reality has taught me that it's not necessarily that. It's that they want to spend time with you. Like there's like
yeah,
and so like to me, the balance and the timing of things, and so like I was so out of balance. I tracked every single thing I did for like 6 months. Like, was it work? And this is like when I was starting my business. So like when things change for me, like for me, how I work, right? When things are different and new, and I don't know what's going on, or I feel like I'm behind, or I just throw time at it. I dedicate. I can focus, and that's maybe one of my best qualities, is where I can just hone in and just pound it out. But that's also to the detriment of everyone else. I get tunnel vision very quickly, and everything else fades away. And so I'm very good at getting into tunnel vision. So I get solely focused on things. Part of my personality. That's just kind of how I am. But then I found like, okay, with the help of my wife and talking through things and like just real conversations, like it's time. Like we need,
yeah,
I need to be able to dedicate time, and it could be simple things like let's color a picture together, or there's a YouTube Kids Creative, I think is what the YouTube channel is. It's literally like a dude teaching everyone how to like draw little funny figures and characters. And we loved that. That was a lot of fun. We'd all get pen and paper out,
yeah.
and we'd take our little Sharpies and we would draw along on the page and follow along, and we'd all compare image. Like it's that moment. Like those are the moments your kids are like, they remember that, and they ask for those. And it's simple, pen and paper, and all you needed was a YouTube channel for like 20-30 minutes. And we did like 3 or 4 videos like that. So it's little things like that, I think, that make a big difference. And I didn't think I grasped that initially as a father, and have been learning that more and more frequently.
But in the same, yeah, man, I agree with that, right? Like Saturday mornings,
Yeah.
like we are kid time, right? Dedicated to each of the kids. We rotate weekends, so it's like, daddy daughter, daddy son, and wife gets Sunday.
True.
Sunday
She gets
morning,
some
right?
time.
Yeah.
But the thing here to keep in mind is, right, whether it's your job or whether it's your family, if you aren't dedicating time to learn new things or spend time with people, one of those things is going to atrophy.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Use it or lose it.
potentially die.
Yeah.
Right.
Use it or lose it.
So the reason balance in our life is important is because you're like, you need to feed
Right.
with time, technically, those things in your life that you value.
Yeah.
And I think it's very clear in this conversation, you guys have gone through the same struggles, just repurposing and making sure that family is part of that, and gets that time, because you're right. Like that was a big shift in our lives, to schedule things and make sure that you're dedicating time to feed those things that are valuable to you.
I love that you use the word dedicated and not necessarily just time, because you can say, I'm going to spend 3 hours on Saturday kind of thing. But if it's not your attention, and again,
your mind's elsewhere,
or family,
it's hard. Yeah.
Look, if I know we're getting a little late, but if I could ask you guys a question, because this has been weighed on me for
depends
probably
on
my
what the
whole
question
life.
is, Tommy, but I'll let it slide this time.
We'll let it slide. Okay. So it's funny that, we talked about this morning, like the data god and the MVP and the user group. Like, I'm a user group leader. I'm in a great position in the company. I'm or whatever you want to call it, the accolades. I've always, saw that as like, oh, good. Once I have that, then there'll be security. Right. And for me,
yeah.
And so, because how quickly this industry changes and what we do. And I think part of my personality, I mean, when I was a kid, I struck out 5 times and I literally ran away from the field. And my dad could not find me for 3 hours. So maybe that's just me, but I've always had the fear of kind of like, yes, things are great now, but you see how this industry changes. What if I don't keep up?
Yeah.
Right. What if I don't keep up with everything that's happening? Just like if you go on vacation for 2 weeks and you're like, I have to catch up on so much stuff, and the industry, the knowledge, what I'm doing with my job. What if what I'm doing now is the normal thing? So I've struggled. That can be a motivating factor sometimes, is
Sure.
the fear of the future, so to speak. Do you feel that at all in what you do as well, like in this industry, or do you think that's maybe more of a per person situation?
I think it's per person.
Okay.
I don't typically have those thoughts as motivators
I have
for me.
lots of thoughts on this one.
In general, I know internally whether or not I'm doing what I need to do to stay mainstream, to understand my technical area, to contribute, to bring new ideas, and keep plugging away. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's the value of those things that I find rewarding that is more of a motivator, right?
Yeah.
To helping people is probably a large motivator for me,
Yep.
as opposed to not being or falling behind. I know if I'm falling behind or not.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah.
it's and frankly, the amount of time we spend in our technology area, I could take a while off before I'm
Yeah.
in a detriment, right? Like so that's kind of where I say. What
Yeah.
about you, Mike?
So here, I don't want to work forever. I'll put that out right now.
Mhm.
So what I think, I think I have some strong feelings around. I love the entrepreneurship stuff, and I will be more than happy to talk to anyone around what an entrepreneur is. How does that work? How do you get to that stage where you can do that kind of stuff? And I think there are some very deliberate things that keep people in the workforce and don't let them take larger risks. And so when I think about my career, I took a lot of my decisions made early, and this is like back in the engineering days before I was even around Power BI. This is just random life advice from Mike, right? This is where we're going to go on this one, right? I felt like very early on in my career, I made a lot of decisions based on the things I had to pay off. A house, I bought a house, is a heavy weight around your neck to get that thing paid off and done. And then I had we had to get a new car, so like that was another thing that was kind of a weight. And so I feel like as I have matured, a lot of my decisions in career wise, like I wouldn't take another position because I didn't want to fail there. I didn't want to get into a spot where I was like, I didn't want to take another position because I didn't want to get a manager that I didn't like. Right? I kind of like my manager now, but I didn't want to risk it to go beyond that. So I would characterize my life right now as where I've gotten to as being an independent business owner now is it's been like, I think of an analogy like this. Imagine a very large lake, and so much so that you can't really see the other side, right? And then in that lake, there are, thousands of stones, right? And some of these stones, I'm standing on a stone and I'm going to jump to the next stone. Some people are willing to take a very large jump to get to the next stone. Other people are not willing to take that huge jump, and they're looking for stones that are kind of closer in their area, a logical, slower next step. And I feel like in my early part of my career, I made I'll call it strategic risks, where I was calculating out what the risk was to go do this new thing, take a new position, get some other stuff, and I would just kind of slowly move ahead. And then as I removed risk out of my personal life, so again, one of these motivating factors that adds to my security long term is I want to be financially independent. I don't want to have to rely on my time trading for money. And so I think of dollars, I think money is really the equivalent to time. Because right now everything I do is every hour I spend, I give you my hour and you give me the money back. And so for me right now in my life, I am working hard as I can to maximize the amount of money that returns to me for my dollar, because I know I can put those dollars or save them or invest them somewhere, and then those become a time essentially for me at the end, right? So I'm basically storing up time for myself so I can be financially independent. So I've read a lot of books on this stuff. I have a lot more of opinions around that, but the gist of what I feel like I'm doing right now is like, maximize my time right now, make it
Yep.
as valuable as I can, and then remove personal risk as much as possible. And so that's, take it for
I
what it
think,
will. There's a lot of things you can unpack there.
yeah, if we're translating this from work-life balance into career development, which I like, right, to some degree,
I think
I mean,
it's
those
it's got to be
things,
the same.
it has
those
to be
things,
dependent.
Yeah.
those things are, yeah, absolutely in line, right, Mike?
Yeah.
Financial independence.
Yep.
Consulting was the best thing ever for me. And
Mhm.
it doesn't have to be that way for people, but what it does is it pulls you out of a work for a business mindset
Yes.
and makes you understand that if you invest in yourself, you are a sellable product to other businesses.
Yep.
They will fight for you. And that's where your career explodes, right? You have a talent and ability that goes above and beyond someone just telling you what to do in this microcosm of their business and you becoming really good. You're expanding and broadening what you know and how you go about implementing that. That becomes a commodity within businesses. And that's how you accelerate your path,
Yeah.
even if you want to stay within business,
Yeah.
right?
Agreed. Yep.
And by investing in yourself, you build that, and then you can pick and choose. If you're not valued in the position or in the company, then you can go find a job with, and
Yep.
it's not going to create near the amount of angst. It's not going to,
Yep.
like be this fear thing that, oh my gosh, I don't know if anybody else is going to hire. They will.
Right.
Or, I mean, technically, that's what consulting gives. They will.
Right.
Versus
Mhm.
if I'm telling you, like, invest the time in yourself, grow, learn. Communities are great for that because, like even in user groups, you talk to the people. These are just people. Everybody's
Yeah.
doing very similar things in
Yep.
different businesses, but that's where it's like investing in yourself. You will never lose out.
And I really love those points. There's a few good ones there, because let me start with kind of the first thing you said about the selling yourself. And I think we're in a pretty good industry where we can do that
Yep.
pretty well, because, and take the example of Christopher Wagner's the Data Gods Mountain, right? And when we were sending suits, I'm like, what? No, but
Just got marketing material,
no,
Tommy.
no,
I'm a data god.
but this is it's a struggle though, because I don't necessarily like, in a sense, selling, but like with the pod, I've always been able to sell the Chicago Power BI user
Sure.
group, and I never say it's I say it's our, and they say the team, and the team is usually has been me. But when I asked Chris, I'm like, what can I do? He's like, share it. I'm like, I don't want to share myself being a, I'm like, how pretentious. But at the same time though, like, we're in an industry too where, we're not necessarily like a salesperson where we're directly making money, but we have this really unique opportunity to commit. And this goes back to user group. This goes back to contributing back to the community, where it's a delicate balance of being able to, that passion
Yep.
to share, but also showcasing. Like when I moved to Chicago, I had a few opportunities, and I'll never stop saying this, but I was talking to a lot of recruiters and then a lot of companies, and more people were interested or more keen on the fact that I led a user group than anything I did in the past.
Yep.
Which I always found, and I always will find, the most interesting, because say, yeah, I did this, we implemented this and this,
Yep.
and I'm like, oh, and I also lead the Chicago Power user group, and or the Tampa user group. How long? What'd you do with that? I'm like, yeah, we did this program. They're like, that's really neat. And then that's when the interest came, which again shows, like, if you're not that if you're not doing anything in the community, but how powerful that is.
But that's just
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, like, that's like one of the main points that I made in that 3-part blog series around, like, people building their resume.
Yeah.
How do you show a business or tell a business what you've done in your career, or as a person that is saying Power BI really well in 60 minutes?
Right.
You don't. All of the things you've done before that do.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm a Power BI user group leader.
Yep.
I'm a this, I'm a that, because what that's telling the business is, man, this guy knows this stuff so well. He's so passionate about it. He's doing stuff outside of work around that, and that sets you apart.
Yeah.
Like, it just does.
And you're absolutely right. But again, it goes back to time. It's still the time.
Sure.
So for me, doing the user group stuff, it's a delicate balance between the passion, and I'm going to teach everyone an Italian word here, agita. And for those who don't know that
How do you
word,
spell that? How do you spell that?
Agita, so agita. And you got to say it with the hands too. But basically, the formal definition is literally acid reflux in the stomach, which is just so perfect. But it really means like it's anxiety,
like
it's,
the word,
you know,
like the word agitate, right?
yeah,
Agitate.
like agitate, but it's anxiety kind of thing. So,
Yep.
for example, like doing all this time and not being with my kid gives me a lot of agita. So that's but it's a delicate balance because you can do the user group stuff, and then you know, this goes back to our MVP conversation. Like, do the MVP, do user groups. Well, guess what? That's more time.
Yes.
So
Yes.
there's a delicate balance between showcasing what you can do and doing it.
Yes.
But also giving yourself enough time, because there was a time too when I was doing more with the user group than the job when I just started getting involved. Alex Powers just said, like, have you ever seen the light bulb moment for new users? Anytime you go into something new, you know, it's all of a sudden like that can become
100%.
consumption. You
100%.
know,
And I'll give you a very
Yeah.
clean example, Alex, of where I've seen this happen. When I walk into Excel or to a company and I go open Excel and I open Power Query and then I automate a load from a folder, people's jaws are on the floor. And then I tell them the best part of all this is, like, this has been under your nose since 2016. And they're like, how do we not know this? And I'm like,
No, I think
that's, to me, that's one part of that. I was like, holy smokes. Like,
I think his
more people need to do that.
Yeah, I think his question was related to, like, giving them that excitement and then knowing in the back of your head that they're about to spend so many nights and weekends to devolve their work-life balance.
Right.
I think that's what he's getting at.
No,
Like, are you like fearful when you find the excited people? I'm like, well, no, like, I don't control like how much time they spend.
The next time you do that, Mike,
they can watch this podcast and learn.
I'm
how
about to
manage their
ruin
time.
your friendships and your life.
Yeah. No, I don't think I don't read it that way. It says
in your mind
to give up the point of competency. Yes, exactly. Well,
Seth was right.
Yeah, Seth read it right. I read it the other way. I'm like, what's that light bulb moment when you taught people something and they're like, oh, that's amazing. Yeah.
You married? How do you like to ruin that?
Yeah.
Power Query.
Power Query.
That's amazing. All right, we are. I think it's a good breaking point.
Yeah.
We are right around time. Everyone who's joined online, thank you so much. We appreciate all your comments and things on the live chat. Tommy, where can you find the podcast?
So you can find the podcast anywhere podcasts are available: Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts. If you want to join in the live conversation, join the YouTube channel PowerBI.tips every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central Time. We have all the links for the next few episodes out. Ring the bell for the notification on the podcast on YouTube. Leave a review on the podcast, like it, and share the word, especially.
Yes, please.
If you like this, if these are the kind of conversations that you want to have more, join in. And then finally, if you want to follow this conversation more, we're having the Chicago Power BI and Milwaukee Power Platform user group tonight, 6 o'clock, 6 p.m.
Come chat with us some more.
Come chat. And then we'll do the happy hour after. We can talk about all of our pains and agita. Agita. Yeah, we're gonna be using that a lot.
Oh
now.
Boy,
I'm telling you, there's a T-shirt.
There's a T-shirt.
That says Game Changer and agita now.
Power Query equals agita. Power Query equals agita.
I'll buy it. How much do you want for it?
Well, awesome. As always, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you guys for being real with us today. I think this was one of these more heavier topics people don't typically talk about, but I think is a good topic nonetheless. Thank you all very much, and I'll see you guys tonight and on Thursday.